Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for the 24th Annual SF Indie Fest. The festival is happening February 3rd through 13th, and I'm so lucky to be here today with the filmmakers in the Bittersweet Shorts program, which is also screening live and in person at the Roxy Theater on February 8th at 7 p.m. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much.
Hey.
Yay. This is such a beautiful, quirky program. I think the films overall leave you feeling kind of cute and whimsical. So, well, all right, Derek is rolling his eyes because I think his is a little
almost.
His brings the bitter to the bittersweet of the theme of the program. But thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you to our audience who's joining us at home. So I'm just going to go around and introduce the filmmakers that we have here. We have Derek Skokara, sorry, who directed the film It's Always Something. We have John Corey with A Pythagorean Love Story. We have Jessica Cohen, who's here with Busted. We have Andrea Rosen, who is here. Did I get it wrong? Rosen, excuse me. Oh, and that's I checked beforehand. Who is here with Helen's Nose. And then we have Kathleen Capasonder. I'm sorry, my notes were bad. Capasonder.
Captasooner.
Captasooner, thank you so much. Who is here with Meet Me with a Mask On. Apologies, I am already inclined to be a very awkward person, and then put me onto a recorded Zoom, and here you go. So thank you so much for joining us and allowing us to share your films in this program. Like I was saying before, it is can be twisted at times, but overall a very hopeful and sweet collection of films that we put together. So I was hoping maybe we could just go around and talk about kind of what brought you to this film, and you know what you think is special about it. And we'll start off with Derek.
Well, this is something I've been thinking about for a long time. I've been writing feature scripts, and most of the short films I made were coming in at a half an hour, which I found was not going to be programmed at festivals, no matter how much they may like those films. And so I started writing these little vignettes, and they sort of piled up. And eventually I found 8 that I thought fit together and sort of felt like they were a fictional day in the life of if not the world, at least this area. And luckily it was actually shot just before the lockdown, just before the pandemic. So we were able to actually be out in the world and on different locations and have, I wouldn't call it a normal production, but close to a normal production. And then, a year and a half of post-production, trying to wait and, see if the film festivals would come back, if there would be a place to show the film. So that's the sort of the most prolonged production I've ever had on a film. It's nice to have that much time, but it's also nerve-wracking once you've spent your money and now you have a film and you're like, what do I do with it now? So, yeah.
Thank you. John, would you like to talk about your film?
Yeah, it was largely about COVID, frankly. I do a lot of corporate work, and that dried up because of COVID. And I thought to myself, I don't really have any excuses not to try and pull off a passion project at this point. And so it was kind of advantageous in that respect. And it really is just about, it was an idea that was kind of bouncing around in my head for a long time. I was a philosophy major in college, and probably the least marketable degree out there. And so I thought this would be a funny way to try and get some value out of my undergrad studies. But it was really just a function of having some free time on my hands. And then, as I'm sure everyone can understand, finish up the script. It's always a work in progress until you start shooting. And so I figured the time is right.
Thank you so much. Jessica?
Hi. I just want to say I love that you described this program as like this quirky, bizarre I feel like we're all just weirdos, and I love being a part of this group.
Yeah.
There was, I don't know, this bittersweet quality, and I really just feel, I feel like I belong with you guys all in this program. So
Show everybody's a weirdo.
yeah.
Confess on camera.
No offense to anyone, but y'all are
No.
weird. No, but yeah, this was my first filmmaking experience, and I think it was definitely a based on a true story type of a moment for me. I was at my own personal COVID rock bottom, as we all probably faced at some point. And I called up one of my closest mentors and friends, Garen Scribner, who directed the film, and had a sort of meltdown monologue about wanting to run away in a van. And I said, should I do it or just write about it? And he said, well, maybe we can kind of do both. And in a matter of, you know, I think it was like 3 weeks, we wrote it, we filmed it, and it was middle of COVID, and a group of filmmakers and creatives from LA drove up to Sausalito, and we just did it, you know, and it was just a wonderful experience, and it connected me back to my artistry during a time when I think I felt super in shambles. And yeah, so that's our little film, and I'm really, you know, excited to be a part of this.
That's so sweet. And lovely. I think your film is just like a burst of energy, and kind of in some ways COVID wish fulfillment. Andrea, would you share a little about your film?
Hi. Yeah, my film, same thing. I wanted to do something creative, and I always like, this is my second or my third short film, and so I always reverse engineer them in that, like, I'm like, okay, what do I have access to, and who do I have access to? So like, my children take classes at this sewing studio, so I was like, I know that they'll let me, and I'm like friends with them, I'm like, I know they'll let me shoot there for like barely anything. And so I sort of like created it around that, and I, you know, I always, not always, but I often have that feeling that, like, you know, like compare and despair of like, oh God, everybody's life is so much better. So I wanted to do a character who was really having that experience / crisis. And I thought like a second nose was so funny to me. And you know, and then I actually wrote it before the pandemic, and then I was like, oh great, now we're in a pandemic and everybody has to wear masks. So then I was able to like kind of incorporate that into the story, which at first I was like, ugh, and then it turned out to, then I was like, oh, this does totally work. And I was lucky enough that Stephen Park, who played opposite me, agreed to be in it for a burrito. And you know, it was just like, it was a really exciting process. And I like wrote that little song and had my friend do the music for it. And my kids are in it. My husband's in it. It just was like a special project that I'm proud of. And yeah, that's it.
Wow. That's so lovely. Also, I would legit kill for a San Francisco burrito. So don't mention, because there's
It
no
was,
such
I
thing as
shot it
LA.
in LA. I'm in LA. So it was an LA burrito.
Okay. Well then, never mind.
Yeah.
Moving on. Just kidding. But thank you so much. That's so cute. And I love utilizing your, you know, crew of people, right? Like the
Because
lovely
it was,
ones.
yeah, it was before vaccines. And so I just like had to use my pod, you know? And
Yeah.
so basically everybody on camera is in my pod except for the people who aren't, and they're in masks. And like all the scenes I did with Stephen Park were outside 6 feet apart. So everyone felt okay doing it.
I think that's been the most interesting things about the process of putting together these shorts, is thinking about the fact that we all are creating under extreme duress, right? Not that making films in general is not a traumatizing experience in and of itself, but you add in all of the other restrictions, sometimes really beautiful things can come out of the hardship, right? The coal pressed into a diamond. So thank you so much. Kathleen, I think yours is the most COVID quirky, is the new genre we'll coin here right now. Can you speak a little bit about your film?
Yeah, so I grew up about 10 minutes outside of Walt Disney World, which has been something that I've explored personally a lot, in sort of my own, personally. And so being back there during the pandemic was something that I really had to grapple with. And so I was in the neighborhood that I grew up in, and my parents still live there. And I was walking around it and I saw this house that really stood out. And it was the house that ended up being in the film. And it was completely painted in orange. And I started, dreaming about, okay, who would this person who lives in this house be? And then one random day I saw my old dance teacher, and she was walking in a very specific way. And so I just started thinking, who would I be, or who would this sort of character be who has never left this very specific neighborhood in this very specific area of the United States, right? Where you're so close to the theme parks, but it doesn't always feel that way. And then also wanting to explore like how intimacy can occur during these times. So it was just like a series of dreams and just different quirks that I wanted to explore. Similarly, I made this in March, so vaccines were just starting to become a thing, March of last year. And so I kind of used the resources and the artists that were available, and that was really important to me, going to the local filmmakers of Orlando and Central Florida. And so, yeah, the film is just this really quirky exploration of intimacy and how, being alive right now can feel really odd, and being where I'm from can feel very odd, especially in a state that is a mixed bag when it comes to things politically. So I didn't want to create a political film, but I wanted to create something that kind of is responsive to how I felt in that moment, and just allow for some magic to come in.
Thank you all so much.
I have a question for you. Did you, when you were programming it, did you have Bittersweet in mind ahead of time, or did you see films and then create the theme after seeing the collection of films?
It's never a good idea to go into programming with an idea for a theme, because it puts on blinders. Really, you're not able to see everything for what it is. And so as I'm curating the programs, I kind of look at the films that I loved and thought were incredible, and then I start thinking about the threads that bring them together. And so it comes about kind of like I think of it as collaging. I'm also a found footage filmmaker in my spare time. So just thinking about kind of themes that stick out to me, and moments that I say like these are kindred, like this is our weirdo crew.
Right.
So it's, there's very little method to the madness. It's just a feeling that is sparked by the tones of each film.
Got it. Organically, did it come to you?
Yeah. So I was hoping maybe, right, what an undertaking. You start with the spark of a seed of an idea, and you bring people together, in many cases under, a lot of difficult circumstances, and you finally get your film made and you get to show it. And we're lucky enough that you're going to get to show it at the Roxy in person, or to this group of the audience that are at home watching. What is it that you each hope that your film leaves the impression on the audience when they walk away? And we can go in reverse order this time, and we'll start back with Kathleen. You can talk about what you hope people are going to walk away with after they see your film.
I generally don't like to assign what someone should feel when watching a piece of art of mine, but I would hope that, it provides some retrospection on, their sort of experiences with intimacy, and just kind of showing them like, oh, intimacy is odd, and being alive right now is odd. And if anything, it can also just provide some respite. It's a quirky film. It's not supposed to be extremely serious, even though it's being presented in very serious circumstances. So yeah, just a mix of those things.
Thank you. Andrea, how about you?
I guess like I, just always aim to like relate to people and have people's inner feelings relate to whatever I'm doing because my stuff comes from like just a feeling and then I kind of like layer on what's funny and amusing to me. So I hope that like I delight people and that they also feel like, oh, I know what that character is going through also. Like I totally relate. So that's what I hope for.
Thank you so much. And Jessica?
Yeah, very similarly to Andrea, Andrea or Andrea?
Andrea.
Andrea. Very similarly, I think I was trying to capture, or I wasn't trying to, I was just displaying my own quarter life crisis and very much trying to highlight the bitterness or the unpleasantness in that. And I think many people my age and during this time specifically and of this millennial generation that are so obsessed with knowing their identity and displaying it, through social media, through whatever, we're all trying to be these identities, whether it's the Broadway dancer or the van girl. It's like we have to be something and we have to know what that something is. And so my character was basically just the ugliest version of myself grappling with that identity crisis. And I hope that people relate to that. And yeah, that's the feeling I was trying to convey.
Thank you. And John, how about you?
It's really a challenging question. I it's I've never really thought of it in those terms, but I think my film is essentially kind of a gag. It's basically all plays to this final sort of bit. So I hope that people, I hope that there's some nervous laughter. But I think also working with these actors, I like them so much. I hope that people recognize the sort of authenticity of their connection. I think that would be satisfying for me.
Thank you so much. And Derek, how about you?
I mean, it's essentially social satire, so that's the main function. And I think in a weird way, knowing your audience is always important. I think I never think of the audience necessarily when I'm writing, but once I start working with actors and crew, all that stuff, you really start to think about the reaction you're going to get. And so it was important to me to cover enough ground and enough sort of, everybody does bizarre, strange, stupid things when they think no one's watching. And essentially that's what this film is. Stephen Fry is sort of the omniscient narrator watching and judging everybody. And I wanted to make sure that I covered as many things as possible, because I think people will watch a social satire and say, oh, look at these idiots, I would never do that. And I think the beauty of this film is that eventually you're going to recognize some aspect of yourself in one of these 8 segments. And then, like John said, there's a certain level of making the audience entertained and uncomfortable, and creating some nervous laughs. Because I've noticed that in so far as showing the film, that some things get bigger laughs than others. And the more, the closer it is, the closer it cuts to the bone of people in the audience, the less laugh it seems to get, So I guess that's my point. Make the audience as uncomfortable as possible.
That is the way I like to roll as well. Well, I want to thank you all so much for joining us and for sharing your films with SF Indie Fest. Really such a pleasure to meet you all. And thank you to our audience for bearing with us.
No.